You have no idea how happy I am that I am once again building Ira. It may not be Blitz, my favorite format, but just to be able to say Kodachi for one, Kodachi for two, feels like I'm finally back home after a year of being stripped from the one hero that got me into competitive Flesh and Blood to begin with. For those of you newer to Flesh and Blood, way back in the day, the name Kugane used to be quite well known within the Flesh and Blood community because of my Ira gameplay. Not that I was particularly good as a player myself, I am way too casual to be a true competitive player, but people knew that I would build all kinds of weird Ira brews to the extent that they not know what to expect whenever I showed up at an event. I played Ira and Blitz over the course of close to, if not more, than 500 events. And if you look up Kugane Gaming on the lifetime leaderboard, you'll see that I'm sitting at over 3000 experience. It's quite a bit of XP. Needless to say, this is the one deck that no matter what hand I draw into, I don't even need to think and my instinct already knows what to do and what is the best value play. With that kind of experience in mind and trying to translate it to my CC journey, my first impression was that Ira would perform quite poorly in CC since the deck doesn't really have anything unfair outside of the +1 value on the second attack each turn. So I kind of expected it to easily die to things like OTK Florian that is going around at the moment. But after actually testing the deck for a bit and having faced a plethora of different opponents, I have to say I was wrong. The deck is more than fine. It's not an S tier deck, and I mean it doesn't need to be, but it's still like an upper A tier deck that, thanks to the extra 1, is able to generate a 14 to 15 value turn with ease over and over. This is the kind of average value that top tier decks like Briar and Chain used to push in the height of their CC career. Of course, unlike decks like Briar, Ira cannot condense that value into a single turn. But luckily, thanks to the Kodachis, Ira is very good at making the opponent waste cards and preserve her own life total to kind of whittle them down and continue to fatigue them that in the end game, she can continue to push out 3 value every turn even with a single card. Some highlights from the past week of practice were that even against decks like Verdance, Ira is in a very good spot because she can simply bring a 65 card deck and completely fatigue Verdance as well with AB2, just blocking any kind of arcane damage that Verdance is trying to do and having a little bit leaking here and there outside of the AB2 range. And gameplay wise, Ira plays exactly as it did back in the Blitz days. You want to block with 2 cards and attack back with 2 cards to get the most value out of your hand. If the opponent has an on hit that you need to stop, you just block with 3 cards and you just throw the Kodachis back for 3 damage total. The only thing that doesn't really work that well in CC anymore are things like Razor Reflex and Heron's Flight. Since we are at double the life total, reactions and these kind of janky comp pieces, they aren't as strong as they used to be back in the Blitz format because it takes quite a while until the opponent is in a Kodachi lock where these actually start to matter quite a bit. So ratio wise I am running less of those, but other than that it's like you're playing Blitz except it's CC and yeah, double the life total. Sometimes I can take a very long time before you start seeing some actual results. If we're talking about heroes like Enigma, for example, in the beginning of the game, it feels like you're not really doing anything at all. But you will be winning quite a majority of your games if you just stick to your value plan. Just make sure to block as much damage as you can on people's combo turns if you're up against a Zen deck, for example, and you will whittle them down in the late game. Right now I estimate Ira to land at around a 53% win rate once people have fully optimized the deck. I think my list that I have now is very close to optimal, but there are some pieces I still want to change. This isn't an S tier deck like most 55% plus win rate decks are, but I do think that this is good enough. Like if you want to invest in a deck that you can play for a long time or at least play for the next year or two, I think Ira is really it because there's a significant chance to even win a big event because it has quite a lot of good matchups and it can outplay quite a range of heroes. You do need to get a little bit lucky here and there. There are some bad matchups that you don't want to face, but if you face only 1 or 2 of those during an event, it's fine, right? You can still make it into the top 8 with ease. Originally, I thought the deck would perform very poorly against decks like Victor and Enigma, but after playing against those, it is surprisingly fine. Even though we cannot utilize things like the Tiger Stripe Shuko against Enigma without running things like Double Strike or a fine center combo, the fact that we can very easily present 2 Kodachis each turn puts them in a very annoying position where they need to have enough Spectral Shields to absorb the first and the second Kodachis, which most of the time just leads to stripping a card either out of the hand or they lose a 3 or 4 Walk Aura. So even if it feels that in the beginning of the game you're not really doing much and Enigma is just keeping her life total very high the whole time, as long as you just keep playing value, you will end up with them anyways. It's costing them 2 to 3 cards a turn to stop whatever you are doing, and while it's only costing you 2 cards a turn to stop whatever they're doing, in terms of card economy, you're going to be winning. Dorinthea is a deck that is a bit problematic though, mainly because of Twinning Blade. It's kind of like old school Ninja versus Warrior again, where if you're blocking too much against Dorinthea, you can get screwed over by a well-timed Twinning Blade. Well, at the same time, if you block too little, then they just react over whatever you're blocking, and then they just get a +1 counter regardless on the downblade. So I think that Dorinthea is kind of a sleeper, because in the hands of a true flesh and blood strategist, that deck is extremely potent. I just see too many Dorinthea players kind of playing the deck poorly, like they are trying to run it like a reaction deck. But I think it isn't. Like, Dorinthea is all about build-up, like putting enough pressure but knowing what to put in the arsenal and when it's time to go for a big combo turn, and I don't see enough players doing that yet. But I do think when people get more and more experience with Dorinthea, we're going to be seeing it at top tables in the very near future. And I'm going to go a step further. I think even Bolton is going to be at the top tables in the future. But this video is not about Warrior, it's about Ira, and all my matches against Dorinthea in particular have been quite close. I do think Dorinthea is favored because of the Twinning and Sync Steel Blade combos, but for the most part it should be fine. I think if you play Ira well, you should still be able to get like a 40% win rate against decks like this. In my case, so right now I am running Censor in the deck. I did a guide in the past on Patreon where I mentioned like what cards to call for if Censor does it. I might have to go back and see if I can find that guide and update it for all the current heroes. So if you're a patron, keep an eye out for that. I will look into that in the near future, but for now I want to get all the deck tags in order first. I think those have priority. But Censor helps a ton against a variety of matchups, but I do have to admit, it's quite skill intensive to know what an opponent has and at what time. In my case, based on how somebody blocks and how they're playing, I can usually have a rough idea what they're holding in their hand, so I know what to call, whether or not it's gonna be their combo turn. Against Brute, for example, if they stop blocking, then you kind of know that they have a Blood Rush Bellow or something in the hand. Same with Bolton. If Bolton stops blocking, then you know that the combo turn is about to roll around, so you can very easily call something like Luminous Ascension. But that requires you to know all these cards by name, and then at the same time knowing what every single deck in the game does. If you don't have that kind of knowledge yet, and you haven't reached that point as a Flesh and Blood player yet, I highly suggest just take out the Censors and put a playset of Torrent of Temple in here instead. I'm still figuring out what the sideboard is supposed to look like. Some obvious inclusions would be things like Poison the Well for Verdant. But even without Poison the Well, my Verdant's matchup is already positive, so I do wonder if I end up... The only times where I feel like I need Poison the Well is in those games where it kind of keeps on dragging longer and longer, and I don't want to end up in a scenario where time is called and I get the draw because the game couldn't finish in time. So I guess in those situations, Poison the Well could help against Verdants by just playing it at a crucial moment and make them lose life instead of gaining it. But I don't think it's necessary at the moment, especially if the Verdants players play at a decent pace. Maybe I should just call a judge if I feel the opponent is playing a bit too slow, but I have to see how that is gonna pan out. For now, I don't think I need it, but I might end up including it in the future. One card that I am particularly curious about to bring back into the deck is Reinforce the Line. I've played this card a lot in Blitz as a super good card in Ira. Far too many times I find myself in a position where the opponent has some kind of a dominated attack or an overpowered attack, and I cannot stop the on-hit, whatever it may be, because I have all my defense reactions in my hand and not in my arsenal, and then I get in a bit of trouble. Reinforce kind of functions like a defense reaction, but because it's an instant, you can push one of your attacks up, and then you can still get out of a difficult scenario that way, even if it's in your hand alongside your attack. So I think this might be a solid sideboard attack for the Brutes and Guardians, but I need to see what I want to be taking out in the future. Something I'm also considering for the deck, and this would kind of turn this more into a full-on control strategy instead of a mid-range Ira, is to play a play count your blessings. Well, the first 3 you play are not particularly powerful, and in fact they're kind of bad value. Your 7, 8 and 9th copy generates so much healing that I think it might be worth considering. Not only that, if you do go first and you can play multiple of these in your first turn, you heal a bunch, you deny your opponent a way to mulligan the hand, and in the end we are still being able to Kodachi for 3 damage per turn, and then use something like our Spring Tunic to get us an extra resource to play a Count Your Blessings for a massive heal back to back. I will test it out in the future. Once I know more about this kind of Ira playstyle, I will definitely update the Patreon first, and if it is a particularly good deck, I will do a video about it next month or so. My guess is that it's a bit too cheesy, because you do get into situations where your opponent has a big honored attack like I mentioned earlier, and if you have a bunch of instants in your hand and you cannot stop that, you're in a bit of trouble, even though that you can play these out in response to whatever they are doing. I don't think it's good, especially if you end up drawing into 4 of these, which can be rather disastrous, and it will happen sometimes because you're running 9 copies of it, right? So you might see multiple copies at once, so I'm not really sure if it's gonna be a good deck, but I want to try it at least, you know? That's the one thing I love about Ira. You can try all these weird strategies like putting pummels in there, taking the pummels out, putting your Count Your Blessings in there. Ira gives you that creative freedom, so I do want to at least try it. So if you're a really new player and you don't have legendaries yet, I think one of the more expensive cards is going to be the Fiendal Spring Tunic. If you want to replay Fiendal Spring Tunic, I would suggest to put a Blood Drop Brocade in here. The reason is that the first Kodachi is almost guaranteed to hit anyway, so at that point you've already dealt damage, and if you need an extra resource as kind of like a gotcha moment that you want to play a Razor Reflex, the Blood Drop Brocade lets you destroy that instant speed, so you can always do that, and it keeps that element of surprise, so I would definitely check that one out until you can get a Tunic in your hands, because Tunic is just really good in Ninja in general. I'm a bit sad that we don't really have a dedicated Ninja chess piece yet. I kind of wish that the new Kasaya were not Mystic and that the effect were a little bit different, that you don't need Qi in order to generate the Zen tokens, for example. But I guess that we need to wait a little bit longer until we get a vanilla Ninja chess piece that helps us to generate some resources. When it comes to comparing Ira to Katsu, I think we have a very nice ninja cycle going, with Ira now being more of a control to mid-rangey ninja, where Katsu is more of like a mid-range aggro ninja, and then you have Zen, which is more like a combo mid-range specialist, and Fai, which is a full-on aggro specialist. I was kind of hoping that Fai would have gotten a good supplementary slot in this set, but it seems that they're just bringing us more Ash pieces for Dromai. No idea why, but maybe they don't want to give Fai too much, because Fai can get out of control rather easily. But for the time being, I don't think going into an aggro ninja plan is all that fruitful, so Fai just has to wait to shine in a future meta. But at the moment, I think both Zen and Ira do quite well, especially if Runeblade ends up being popular. I think Zen loves facing off against Runeblades because he can generate a Zen state token on demand from the chess piece rather easily. Because we got Ira as a hero, I'm kind of speculating that we might be getting an Ira Armory deck sometime down the line. I can't know for certain, of course, but the way that things are lining up, I'm really thinking we're heading in that direction. I do hope if we do get a Ninja Armory deck that it is not just equipment pieces that are relevant in the deck, but we get some solid in-deck combo cores to make Ninja and especially Katsu relevant again, because I do think they can hit multiple bursts with one stone if they do bring out an Armory deck. But we just need to wait and see and have a little bit of faith in LSS that they know what they're doing, that we will see something more for Ninja in the near future. Anyway, these are my thoughts about Ira so far. please be as kind as subscribing to my channel and liking the video. And if you want to be even kinder, leave a comment down below. I'm halfway to being able to monetize this channel as well, so it will be a huge help if you can engage with my content regularly. Also, if you love my Flesh and Blood content, I do have a Patreon over on patreon.com/GuganiGaming. I just opened a new perk in the 10 or higher tier as well. I'll be sharing some playmats that I'm making for some of my customers for various card games like Star Wars, One Piece, and of course Flesh and Blood. I'm currently trying to get an HD version of the new Ira art as well, because somebody did ask me to make an Ira playmat for them with a different background than the artwork in the card shows. So I will share that one once I do make it. Do keep in mind, I am not planning to sell any of these maps. These are not my IPs. I do not own the rights to them, but I do share the digital files on my Patreon for whoever wants to print one for their personal use, so do check that out. And I think that's all for today. Thank you everyone. I hope to see you all soon with another Flesh and Blood video, and I hope you have a lovely day. Take care.